Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and it is our first video review in the new office. So if you're a newcomer, then the echo is just because we have just moved and these shelves will be getting filled rather. But most importantly now, to actually talk about what we're here to review, and that's new Corsair SF600 and SF450. SF meaning small form factor, so yes, it should be SFF, but it would be a little bit of a mouthful, and Corsair do use the general two letters AX, RM, although we have got RMI and RMX now, so maybe I should have thought that through before I started filming. But anyway, they are teeny tiny power supplies. Now you may be thinking to yourself that the small form factor power supply is quite a niche market, and there aren't very many people out there that make them, but they're becoming more and more required now, is probably the term that I need to use, because even the guys at Parvum are now making cases that need these little power supplies. But the really good bit about it is back in the day when we needed power supplies with massive wattage, and we didn't have very good efficiency, that was the reason why they were big, because we needed to keep them cool, and they needed to be quite big because of the huge wattages. But now, where things are getting a lot more efficient, including the power supply themselves, but hardware is getting more efficient, so it's using less power. Power supplies are more efficient, so they're creating less heat, which means they're creating less noise. It means that we can take a small itty bitty power supply like this, or like this, which is a 600 watt, I wanted to say 650 watt then, but it's a 600 watt power supply, which really, people will say, how many watts do I need to power a certain amount? Well, for a single graphics card system with relatively new hardware, this is going to be ample. And where it's a small form factor, you'd kind of assume that it's going to be in an ITX system, maybe an MATX system. But if you did want to save some space in a rig that you're designing, or you've just not got quite the amount of room that you're expecting in your current case, you can get a normal ATX bracket, so you can fit this into any case, because it is a different type of mount. It's much smaller, as you would expect, than the normal ATX power supply, and I can show you the two. It's much different to a normal ATX power supply, but as I said, you can get a mount so that you can fit the SF power supply into your normal case. While I do have the two here, you can see this is, yes, it's an RM1000X, which is a 1000 watt power supply, but they do go right down to an RM650, and they're the same size. And the RM power supply on the right hand side is what we would call an average size, although 160mm is the ATX spec, but a lot of power supplies, they've gone that little bit bigger to be able to use a bigger fan and keep the components cooler, and basically to get the efficiency down. But the RMX is 180mm long, whereas the SF is just 100mm long. And when you start talking about width, you've got 160mm on the 150mm on the RM, and then the SF is 125mm. Height wise, it's 85, and then that's against 60. Now I have measured that live. You can get the specs on the Corsair website, but the most important thing was for me to just give you the a rough guide so that you can see that they are incredibly small. If you're watching this video with an air of buying one anyway, you're going to know why you need one of these and the size and all that type of thing. But it could also be really good education for those of you out there that you're starting a project. Maybe you're going to be custom designing the back panel on your case or something like that. Well, now you have a lot more options with our power supply choices, because it was a bit limited before, but I can honestly see these becoming a lot more mainstream than they are at the moment. I'm going to read off the box, but the cables are here. And with a small form factor power supply, one of the most important things is the cable lengths. So rather than me boring you with the tape measure again, your 24 pin is 300mm long. Then you've got a single 8 pin EPS, which is a 4+4. This is the one that powers your CPU, so it'll be in the top left hand corner of your board normally. If you've got an ITX board, it'll either be a 4 or an 8 pin connector. But this is 400mm long. PCI Express cable, There are 2 individual ones. They're not daisy chains, and they're 6+2s, and you get 2 of those, and they are 400mm long. You get 4 SATA cables, but it's a single SATA cable with 4 connectors on it, and that is 445mm long. And then you've got 4 Molexes, and that is a total length of 445mm long as well. Now they're all very nice flat cables, so that does mean in tight confinements you'll be able to bend and fold them to go round corners a lot easier. And where they're black, it does mean it's kind of understated as well, which will fit in with a lot more systems. The other thing that you need to think about with them being flat is it does mean that they're going to take up a lot less room than a braided cable as well. The other thing is where they are all black as well. I've already said that they kind of fit in with other systems and stuff like that. But essentially, actually, the point I was trying to make, I was getting confused and I was searching for my words, is with the RMX series, we did notice that there were capacitors on the end of the cables and there aren't on these. So it's now making me wonder what the ripple performance is going to be like when we do get the actual tester itself out. Now, just quickly, before we do get the tester into the shot, the 600 watt power supply comes in at just over £100. And the 450 watt, comes in at just over £70. So that does mean that the 600 watt one is going to be about £10, give or take, more expensive than the RMX 650. And that was when I was looking on the overclockers store. The 400 watt one, a lot of people will shy away from this small power supply, but believe it or not, I have powered a GTX 980 system on a 450 watt power supply before, and I did it with one of the the original RM 450 watt power supplies. So unless you're going for really high end kit, this may be the one for you. But obviously, most important thing we need to do now is get the load tester out so that we can put some proper stress on these. And by putting some proper stress on these, it's going to then mean I can see how much they warm up, what the fan profiles are like, and then also, most importantly, the electrical performance. Okay then peeps, so moving on to the testing, and obviously it's the first chance that we get to use the table in a review like this, so we're trying to do this slightly differently with the power supply reviews now. So, first thing I did is I've set the machine up. We've got a 20% load, a 50% load and a 100% load. The 20% load is 80 watts. The 50% is obviously 225 watts, and then that full load is 450 watts. Now the 3 things that I will draw your attention to are the voltages on the 12 volt rails, the ripple, which is shown up here with the oscilloscope, and then the efficiency rating, which is going to be this number here. At the moment it's 88.4. We've seen that go up to 88.6. So, right. So we're in the 20% load, 80 watts, with a half decent system with relatively new kit. So kind of the more recent kind of 2 or 3 generations of GPUs and CPUs. You will, around 90 watts will be your sat at your desktop kind of stage. And I'm talking about for a sort of a basic system. With a Skylake system, you're looking at about 80 to 90 watts to sit there with for web browsing. So this is a really good stage for us to look at that. So 80.4 watts is being pulled from the power supply here, which means that it ends up pulling 91 from the wall. That then gives us an 88.4% efficiency. I've actually written down 88.6, but I'm going to change it to 88.4 now. It's settled down a little bit more. If we look at our voltages, with here, they're pretty much very, very close to the 12 mark, but I've written down 12.02, but with our graphs, it's very difficult to be able to show the percentages down to that smaller fraction. And then the other thing that we need to look at is the ripple. And I saw a maximum of 23 millivolts on the ripple. That's this number just up here. It's now there 22.4, 22.2, but I've taken my result as 23. So 23 millivolts of ripple there. Then if we move up a test, this is now up to 225 watts, as I can show you with the other screen. Oh, I could have done if I'd actually hit the right button. Right, there we go. So 226.9, so almost 225, a little bit more. I could have tailed back some of the rails if I'd wanted to, but this is what it's we've got it plumbed in at. Now you can see on our efficiency here, 92.4. I've actually written down 92.8 because I have seen it do that. I have actually seen 93, which was crazy for this. But anyway, we've got 92.8 written down. As you can see, it's flicking around here. In fact, I'm going to change mine to 92.6. It might be because it's just the unit itself's warming up a little bit or something like that. So we've got that. Then we go down to the 12 volt rails. It's not liking that today. Right, so 12 volt rails, again, we've got, they're all around the 12 mark, 11.99 was what I've written. And then our ripple, if we have a look at the top, this is a very, very strong ripple. It's 16.8 was the worst that I've seen on this. It's just gone to 16. Oh, we saw 17 then. 17, I better change it. Now, this may sound like, what's the point if you're just going to write them down when you're doing the video, son? But I can't stare at them all day, and sometimes you get a little spike, and that's the one that I've been run. But as you can see there, it's 16.8. Oh, just a quick 17 there. So there's 16 here. This is a crazy good ripple, especially considering the size of the unit itself. But I don't want to do too much of the bulk of the review. So the other thing that we needed to look at was the efficiency, but we've done that, so that's fine. So now, quick flick, bosh, and suddenly we're pulling 451 watts, almost 51.1 as it says here. Now, ripple at the top, we can see basically it's been 19 up to 20. I've written 20 down because I have seen a 20 on there. Our efficiency is 92.6, which is, again, for this is very, very good. That efficiency rating, very, very good, very strong. You can see it all there. You might wonder why we show you the actual testing, but it's also, you can see that we've done it. You can see that we've got the equipment. You can see how we're doing it. And some people are just genuinely interested in this type of thing. If you're not, then you can skip because we've got the next power supply to do yet. Anyway, also the rails, this is quite a important thing to look at with it at its full rating. And again, you can see that the rail efficiency is absolutely spot on. We've got the second 12 volt rail here. It's just gone down to 11.99. So is that one, but they're all very, very tight and all very, very strong. The actual the rail stability there is brilliant. So that's our 450 watt baby. Now it's time to bust out the 600 watt version. Okay then peeps, so we're on to the 600 watt version. We have 20%, 50% and 100% again. So we've got 125 watts or 121 as it's registering. Then we have 300 watts and 600 watts. We'll run through all of the same processes again, and I'll try to be as quick as I possibly can do. So first things first, we are registering on the 20% here at this present moment in time, 90 point, well, it's just gone down to 0.3. When I took my result, it was actually 89.8. So I think as it's warmed up, it has got slightly more efficient. The fan is actually running now as well. Amazingly though, that's by going over the 90%, that actually makes it pretty much platinum rating. So it's pretty special efficiency when we get there. Fans just stopped and you can actually see that the efficiency's gone up a bit. So it warming up has definitely helped matters. When we look at the ripple at the top here, light the screen up again. The most I've seen is 11.2, but it does seem to float around the 10 millivolt mark. And the rails, it's not liking that today. The rails, come on, go off. There we go. Right, so the rails, they're actually slightly above 12. They go from about 12.12 down to about 12.09, and they go down in tiny little, like, tenth of a volt steps as we go down through. I'll show you as we work our way up. So instantly now, if we have a look at its 12.2, 12.110, you can look at them here. If I flick it up to 300 watts, you can see it's gone down to 12.08, go up to that one, goes down to 12.07. So there's very little difference between the when you load it up. So that means the rails, the actual voltage rails, are very stable, which is very good. So I'm going to bang it up to 300 watts. You can see here 302 point, whatever. At this point, the efficiency I recorded was 92.5. You can see here right now it's pumping out 93. So the actual efficiency on these things is a bit crazy, to be honest with you, to the point where I have grabbed some other power supplies that I know aren't necessarily as good, just to double check that things were set up correctly. Anyway, nearly 93% efficient, absolutely spot on. Again, this is above platinum rating for the efficiency, which is crazy. Essentially, if this was 94, it would be titanium rated, and they don't get any higher than that. And considering that this is only meant to be a gold rated, it's absolutely unreal. When we go up to the ripple, maximum I saw was 18.2, but it does seem to flick around the 15 millivolt mark. We did just get a couple of spikes, so I took the worst case scenario with those, and I've shown you the rails, the voltage on the rails already. In fact, I may have to try doing that in that format in the future. Quick flick of a switch and we're up to 600 watts. At 600 watts, we've got 92 here, but my reading I took was 91.9. And that's percent efficient, and you're looking at a maximum of 20.06 millivolts, sorry, 20.6 millivolts of ripple. It does float around the 20 millivolt mark though. Obviously showing you the actual testing and live testing like this does take a little bit longer, but it's just to walk you through it, and so that we can show you the differences, but also validate all of our scores as well. But I will do some graphs in the conclusion as well, which I think pretty much now that's what it's time for. Okay then peeps, so you've made it to the conclusion. I know I've done it slightly longer, or slightly longer than you may be used to, but I will try my best to refine things as things go forward. Now I'm going to show you the graphs up quickly. We do have the 3 graphs, and they will form the basis of my conclusion, along with my personal thoughts on using them, and we'll talk about noise as well. So we've got our efficiency graph, which is probably the strongest point about these. Then we have our voltage graph, which, to be honest with you, with this, it's still not something I'm particularly I'm sure that I should be including. And then we have our ripple, which is the other main thing that most people ask questions about. Now, I don't pretend or profess, or however you would like to word it, to be a power supply supremo. If you are one of those guys that prefer all the more in-depth stuff, then yes, this probably isn't going to be for you. The way I structure my reviews is to the average Joe at the end of the screen that kind of knows what he wants and is hoping that someone knows that little bit more can explain it to him in a way that is going to be usable and help him make a decision. Now, for me, that's what I know as well. I know a little bit more than most, and I just happen to have an amazing power supply tester and an oscilloscope that I can run on my laptop. So what has it shown us today? Well, it's the first of the small form factor power supplies that I have tested, but the most important thing is I've treated it like all of the other power supplies. Now, I had heard a rumour that these were going to be fairly good and maybe something close to the RMX range that Corsair have already got out, which is why I used the power supply at the beginning to kind of show you the size differences and the fact that they have shrunk it all down. Now, I thought that was quite of a big ask because of the ripple side of things. The RMXs and the RMIs were amazing. Now, with the SFs, they do fall midships in our graphs, but they're significantly better than the older original RMs, and you can see that they're in a very healthy position as far as the ripple's concerned across the board. Only really beaten by the power supplies that are either A, digital, which is like the AX1500i, or the power supplies that do have capacitors on the cables, like the Superflower and the RMX and the RMI. So that explains that. But the calling card for these power supplies is really the efficiency. They're incredibly efficient. To be honest with you, there's only a couple of results that are just below platinum rated, and that's the 20% results, and they're only just below what platinum would be required. At 20% you would need it to be 90% efficient to get the platinum rating, but all of the other results that we took, which are 50% and 100%, they were above platinum, and at 100% there were we had one that was actually above titanium, which was the 600 watt at 100%. It was actually putting out 91.9 when it only, for a titanium rating, it would only need to have been 90. So as far as efficiency is concerned, they are unreal. That may be because they're lower wattage. That could also be because technically there is a lot less componentry inside to be wasted, but it also does go to show you that they're not creating very much heat. Now, with the SF450, that would be my personal favourite out of the two, because it will power pretty much most systems, and even at 100% load it was very quiet. The fan was actually quite surprising for me. It didn't really spin very much and I could hardly hear it. With the 600 watt, however, especially running it at 600 watt, it did get a bit noisy. One of the things I would say though, that as far as noisy is concerned, you need to remember I was running it at 600 watt. At a 300 watt load, it was spinning but still very quiet. So if you've got a system that's going to be pulling around 450, 500 watts top end, this will actually still be a very strong power supply for it and very quiet. It was just more this one, even at 100% load, I was very, very impressed with it. Obviously, if you were to buy the 600 watt, you'd have a little bit more headroom, and I would go as far as to say if you've got a very small system and you're going to be pulling, 550 plus watts through it, then you're probably going to it's not going to be a silent system, and you're probably not going to notice anyway. But it was just something I did want to point out, that I did notice that there was a distinct audible difference between the two. Prices slightly above what you would have expected for a normal ATX, but the fact that it's shrunk down such a small form factor is very new, fully modular as well. I think you get away with that £10 extra price tag, and it wouldn't be something I would be particularly fussed about, especially as it is quite a good looking system. It's very neutral, black and white. It's going to fit in with pretty much most rigs. Also, with the Corsair pinout, I've not checked yet, but I will find out whether the cable mod ranges are going to support this. So that will be something I'm just waiting to hear back from. If it does, you can expect to see a video with these and cable mod cables in the not too distant future. Trying to keep it swift and moving on though, essentially the best thing I can say is the efficiency is quite a big thing now, and I was absolutely astounded with it. So what I've ended up deciding to give these to, based on that outstanding efficiency testing, considering that they are just rated as gold and they are practically platinum, I've decided to give them both the OC 3D Performance Award. If I had to pick my favourite out of the two though, surprisingly, it would be the little baby one. And I would, if you are considering about buying your power supplies, put some research into the wattage that you're going to need, because you will be surprised how many systems don't pull a particular amount of wattage. If you go and have a look at the OC 3D motherboard and graphics card reviews, graphics cards are the most important ones. Go and have a look at the wattage that we pull when we do our power test on the graphics cards, because you'll be amazed how many of them are below 400 watts. But first review back, the Corsair SF450 and SF600 OC 3D Performance Award. Thoroughly deserves it, but for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with the first of, let's hope, many new videos in the new offices. Out.